Yeah, no
Um,
worries.
the, you talked about, you kind of see it in sales, but every person needs a little personal development, right? Do you have a philosophy that you kind of like, if you're coaching somebody and I've hired a lot of coaches myself, even though I'm a coach, because lots of times we have blinders on, we can't see, and sometimes we just need someone to be blatantly obvious and to our face, where I can give the same advice to someone else, but I can't give it to myself always. So looking at what you do, like what are some of the biggest hurdles that you normally have to overcome with a client, and where do you kind of get those philosophies from your point?
Yeah, let's start off with the philosophies, right? I mean, I've kind of gathered all of what I know from multiple masterminds, coaches, and consultants, right? I work with plenty of coaches, and they all kind of influence like me, right? And I'm the one being developed. I think the way my coaching style is, it's how I would treat myself, right? And one thing that I talk about a lot is leadership. The first level of leadership is self-leadership. And the way that I put standards on me, I put standards on others. I've even got the reminder from another good coach within UCM, right? They've been analyzing me, and I was kicking too many people. Some people just needs a little bit of sympathy or empathy, right? And I wasn't doing it. So even for me, I still have room of improvement than just kicking like kicking every single one of them. I need to pep some of them, right? So getting better at that point. But no, I don't think anything that I do is like original, right? It's from someone. I might not know from where this material is from, but it's what I've gathered being just like an observer. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. And when I really started my personal development process, I think I was about 23, 24. So we're talking 20 years or so with me. And I was going through a major change in my life. Actually, I quit drinking, doing drugs, and that's where I made a major change in my life. And so I actually remember the first thing I bought was actually a 6 CD set from Tony Robbins. And it was delivered, set on a counter for, I don't know, a month or two. I finally one day just put the first CD in, and one of the things that always stuck out to me, and it's still to this day, he goes, "Congratulations, you're one of the 1%. 99% of people will never actually put this CD in." And ever since then, that process of me going through a lot of different individuals like Tony Robbins, hiring coaches myself, reading, nobody invented anything, right? Like everything is, there's
Yeah.
nothing new really out there, like human psychology, human behavior. This has been going on since the dawn of man. And it's just been repackaged, repurposed, or repositioned. So I totally understand that. One of the things I saw your post the other day, and you were talking about monk mode.
Mm.
And it really stuck out to me really, really strongly for multiple different reasons. Number one, there's a book out there, 30 Days with a Monk or Live with a Monk. It's Jesse Itzler, and I can't remember the name, but basically he goes to a monastery and he does that for a little bit. So it stuck out to me, number one, using that term, monk mode. I love Jocko Willink, and so extreme ownership, self-discipline. I'm a big believer that self-discipline lots of times gets a bad rap of pain, suffering, giving up, but in reality, self-discipline really sets you free because you're getting things done. It gives you the ability to step away when you want to because everything is handled. And so when you kind of did the monk mode, I could tell actually through your post, you meant, I mean, you're laser focused pretty much 24/7 on tasks throughout the day. Like, hey, here's the next 90 days. This is a goal I'm going to hit here in my business, with my clients, with my income, with my personal life, whatever it may be. Like, right, you had your checklist there. And I could tell that. And I'm not surprised when you just said, hey, when I'm coaching some people, I had to realize not to sometimes be too abrasive, because some people aren't at that level. I always try to tell people, don't judge your chapters 1 to someone else's chapter 20. So when you talked about the monk mode, explain that to me, what your life is actually like when you're in monk mode.
It's beautiful. So some people will say it's hell. Like it's I know Dushin within UCM calls it cycle sprint.
Yeah. I
It
saw
is
that.
kind of it is kind of like a cycle sprint, but I really enjoy it. It's more of a lifestyle for me. That's why I can do it for so long. Where people burn out within a month, I can go ahead and do it for 5 months and be totally fine. And monk mode is just like, for me, I'm from an Asian background, right? I'm Chinese, and we grew up in a traditional household. Get a degree. You either become a doctor, engineer, or you're out, right?
Yep.
So that type of discipline and high standards have moved over to who I am as a person, which I really, I really respect my parents for doing that, because I've had a really strong father figure. So all of that combined in monk mode is just like this lifestyle of like a collection of shared experiences. And it's just a lifestyle, man. I kind of enjoy, resisting certain urges. Like I can feel myself, all right, I'm in control. And that I'm in control if what is what I've fallen in love with. Some people can't do that.
I couldn't agree more. And two people stick out in my mind of when you're kind of talking about that. One is David Goggins, the other one's Tony Robbins. David Goggins has kind of cracked that code of like what you're talking about, the monk mode too. The moment that you're feeling resistance, a pushback, unpleasurable, the best way to overcome that is actually take action, right? Which is why you said, hey, it's beautiful, right? Because you're always seeing progress, you're seeing growth, you're seeing change, rather than a lot of people are stuck in one place and seeing stagnation or decay. Growth is always beautiful.
Yeah.
Decay is always disgusting, right? And so switching that mindset. And so David Goggins is very good at that. And Tony Robbins, kind of the same thing. He makes the comment of, hey, it's not that my brain doesn't battle me with everything I want to do. It's just, I've also trained myself and my brain to immediately go that when I know I start battling myself, the initial next thing is just go into action really, really quick. Juan did a post the other day, was kind of talking about burnout, which you kind of said, some people can't go longer in 30 days with your monk mode. And, he said, people get burned out when they're doing things they don't want to do. And I couldn't agree with that more over the last 20 years of my life, that whenever I'm burnt out, it's because normally I'm in stagnation or decay, I'm not growing, and I'm doing things I don't want to be doing, and I'm feeling trapped. So now I'm burned out. But when I hyper focused on something that I want and a goal that I'm chasing, you have that almost unlimited energy because the excitement, the growth is kind of there. And your upbringing, quite different than American, right? Like most Americans don't have a strong leadership figure. Now the demands that were put on you saying, hey, you must become a doctor, you must become a lawyer, right? Like that's in a lot of different family circles, not just societies or whatever it may, whatever labels we want to kind of put it. There are certain people like that. And it did give you and instill you a self-discipline though. And that's where the monk mode is, that self-discipline. Hey, these are the actions I need to get done. And you really start to enjoy that. So do you think that your ability to do the monk mode for longer than 30 days, like, hey, this is kind of my lifestyle now, this is just always as I am. Do you think that's because you developed that strength your whole life? Unlike somebody that may be in their 20s that you're starting to coach right now, they've been getting participation trophies their whole life, can take, distractions, or they're not doing anything. So do you think it's because of that strength that you built over your life, it's easier for you to do it, and that's sometimes their struggle?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I mean, if we were to think about it, I mean, I'm no expert in this, but if we were to think about it like theoretically, it does make sense, right?
Your brain's a muscle too, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's if I were to sit here and reflect a little bit, I'm I've been envy of the other side, right? On the more white households where it's more, family time and all that stuff. It's like looking at the American movies, right? I used to get emotional seeing the pass ball, right? With the rugby and that
Yeah,
glove from, dad to son.
yeah,
But I also see without those moments and without too many celebrations, that shaped me to who I am. Like I've become more tough to life. And that's kind of like the term where tiger mom, right?
yeah,
The term tiger mom came from the Asian culture,
yep,
from raising the cubs for this wild Amazon. So, although there are two different perspectives in terms of households and cultures, I really respect mine. Although I'm not fully following it myself, I really respect mine. Like I'm not, you know, discrediting in it because it's harsh, but I think I'm more of a favor to that.
yeah. And I would, the term helicopter mom is kind of American, right? It's that mom that's always hovering around and making sure you're protected, right? That's different than a tiger mom, like going out and teaching you how to hunt,
Mm,
how to act, here's how you actually survive in this world. And I think that's a big thing with parenting. It's a big thing with leadership. It's a big thing with coaching, and so you being a leader, like you coaching somebody, hey, here's how I live my life, right? Now you don't have to live my life exactly the way that I do, but you're also here to change. So why don't we find a midpoint? Me being in health and wellness and training people for really 20 years, I always had to be careful, because if someone comes in, they're 40 years old, 30 years old, 50, 25, they've never touched a weight in their life, they've never done anything athletic in their life, I can't expect them to go run a marathon tomorrow. I can't expect them to squat 500 pounds, right? So I have to meet people where they're at. I'm very naturally somebody that has strong levels of empathy, and I can really quickly put myself in exactly your position. The first time that you and I talked, that's why I was able to tell you, David, hey, you really have in 5-10 years from now, I mean, you're going to be at a level of greatness that not many people achieve on the path that you are, because I was able to put myself exactly in your position and see where you are, and from my experience. Now, someone that's brand new, I can't beat up on them that you can't run a mile today when they've been doing nothing but eating fast food. The most they've walked is to their fridge for the last 5 years of their life, and they're 100 pounds overweight. So I had to meet them where they're at and take them each little small step of the way and really support them mentally too. And that's one of the big things about personal training that a lot of people miss. It's just as much as therapy, mentally and physically, coaching, strength wise, mentally and physically. And I think one of the things that served you really well is you have strengthened your mind since your childhood to live this type of lifestyle. So somebody you're coaching, they could be your peer in age, in certain skills, but not your peer in the strength of their mind. And that's maybe what you're kind of talking about, rather being so blunt, like, why can't you just do this? Right? Like, it's no
yeah.
different than me getting mad at someone that is 400 pounds, that why can't you go run a 5K today? It doesn't make any sense. Looking at that question kind of just popped in my head actually too. You're going to have a lot of people that you coach that might not perceive you as a peer, as somebody like to coach me because of your age.
Yeah, it happens.
Like, I'm twice your age. One of the reasons why I wanted to meet you immediately and discuss things with you, and kind of develop a relationship and have this conversation was, I know I can learn a ton from you. But I do have an open mind like that. I do have a growth mindset. I'm not somebody I can learn something from every single communication I have with every single person, no matter their age, right? My girlfriend has 2 kids. I can learn from them, right? And I do learn from them. So do you see that ever becoming a barrier with some people when they're Like, hey, I'm going to be coaching with
Yeah.
somebody, and they show up and they're like, this guy's 10 years younger than I am. Like, I'm not listening to him.
It actually happens. Because I think I think the youngest guy within the group that I'm coaching is 28,
Okay.
and I'm sitting here at 21. So that's already almost like a decade gap. So there's a lot of like humility from someone at that age to be able to be led by, not led, but like guided by a 21-year-old. But I think as because I'm never letting go of the actions that I'm coaching on, right? Some other guy asked me if I was still networking. I showed him my entire sheet. Here's the people I'm connected to. Here's my conversations. Here's my outreaches. And they look over at the templates to outreach. They're using this template, right? So as I'm not taking on opportunities and I'm passing them over to them because I want to give value, they're like, oh, this guy, he's not just another coach who doesn't do what he preaches, but is actually doing the things that he's teaching us. And that's kind of like the gap of respect. And that comes, like I said, with the self-leadership. You got to be able to do what you're teaching others, right? You got to be the person people that you expect other people to become. And I think me jumping into that role, it has worked out because of that discipline. Like I've done the years of building, and now is the moment. It wouldn't have started with, oh, I know I got to be a coaching role within a month. I haven't done this for several months before. Now I'm screwed, but now I have. So I'm kind of in a very good position to be able to show, here's the real deal, here's the results I'm getting, and here's what I'm doing, here's what you're going to do.
Does anyone have any pushback once they kind of realize who you really are?
They do, right? I mean, it's 30-year-olds, people who's been in sales for 15 years, right, in the corporate side. And it's like I wouldn't say old way, because it's always, I don't think there's an old way and a new way of selling. There's always like the revamp, repackaged things.
Yep.
So like they have done this for 15 years, and along those 15 years they've switched jobs and it has always worked out. So when they stumble across it remotely, it's like, all right, so what I'm doing applying for jobs is going to work out for this. And that habit is something that I'm still challenging, like those beliefs, and I'm trying to break it through for them. Some people are actually getting it where, oh, I'm actually getting results. I've done this for 1 week and I'm getting results. So they're seeing, all right, this mindset actually works. Let me, try to, move over, and then maybe take this mindset to the corporate side, right? But some people still have the block, like 2 decades in sales, and you're coming into group, and there's one guy who is the age of your experience.
Yeah.
It's that block still happens.
Yeah. And it's never going to go away. It just rather does that person make the decision to separate their perception of possibly who you are and just look at what you're asking them to do, right? Because again, bringing up the personal development aspect, the sales aspect, again, none of that has really changed. People have their own little twists on things, but the key thing is the action steps you're having somebody do, are they going to get results?
Yeah.
Right. Number one. Number two, is there proof of those results? Number three, and importantly, and awesome from your standpoint, are you holding yourself to those same standards and doing the same thing? To say, hey, I'm not just pulling this stuff out, right? And I think there's a lot of people that are very jaded because there are so many marketers, so many business owners, so many coaches that they preach one thing, and then when you really find out they're doing something completely different. That's jaded a lot of people, and there's so much doubt in so many people's minds now because of so much. There's good and bad in every part of humanity and every person, right? And it's just sad so many people have been taken advantage by some people, which has kind of closed them off to any sort of opening too. We see that on our sales calls, right? You have something that's exactly perfect for somebody, they know they need it, the thing that's stopping them is, hey, I've been burned by this company or that person or whatever it may be. I'm too afraid to mess up again. So I won't even move forward, not realizing that I'm actually making the biggest mistake by not doing something to solve the problem. And people get stuck kind of in that place of fear and stagnation again, because people have been burned. And it does kind of really suck. When you are talking to somebody that is changing a role, being remote is completely different than being in a corporate world. In every single job I've ever gotten in my life, I started working when I was 12 years old, so 30 plus years of working. I've always got because of somebody I knew. It was always my network. I never had to apply for a job. I've never had to have a resume. It was always a referral, and the person that was referring me, their reputation was in very good standings, and they knew my reputation, and I had very good standing. So it was pretty much a no-brainer. Like, how many times I've been offered a position, take the job, and then somebody that's in the same positions I am, I found out they had to go through like a 7-step process to get hired. I'm like, oh, well, I just had a 5-minute call with the owner, and they're like, you're on, type of deal. So going through that process of like the networking piece, go through some of what you do for your networking. Like you said, you have a spreadsheet. When you're helping out some of your clients, you're out there networking, finding jobs for other people, which is pretty unbelievable, right? Like, a lot of people aren't doing that. I know more coaches are starting, but so go through your networking process.
It's I kind of divide it like if you were to start it off first, right? I divide it first. There is, let me have my ideal company, and I do it like from a very business standpoint. It's like ideal avatar. I do exact same questions for me about like who's the ideal company I want to work with. And I get really specific with values of the entrepreneur, but also the company. The impact that we're doing, what type of program is it, what type of reputation does the program have, and I work all of these out with my why and my objective. And from there, I move on to prospecting, because then I know what to find. I prospect companies, I put them all in a list, I schedule another time, because here's the thing with prospecting is something that you can even do cold calling companies. You want to research in a blog, find a bunch of names. No, you want to prospect in a blog, find a bunch of names, save it somewhere else, and then once it's research mode, you go ahead and go through it. Once it's calling mode, you go ahead and go through it. So I have the hunter's playbook for my networking, choosing contacts, choosing who's a key.
Well, and Hunter and JD do an amazing job with their networking and teaching to all their students at UCM. So I'm not surprised at the process that you go through. So continue.
So it's like identifying valuable members within either a community group or within a company. And then from there, I just go ahead and outreach. I, go through research, find a reason to leave a message. I leave that message, prompt a response, and do it that way. There are other strategies within this researching and, this whole process. For example, one of the strategies that I've used a lot is strategic partnerships. I like to add a lot of value up front to where people come back to me, ask me if I know anybody. So, for example, last year in October.
Real quick, when you're talking about a ton of value, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So it depending on like what type of contact it is. But the simple thing of adding value is like referring business. That's the simple format. So, for example, with a recruiter last year in October, I referred him 12 people to 12 of his different positions within 30 days. And obviously I got a referral commission. I mean, that's great. But the better thing, besides from the money, is like they got this sales guy, really good guy, got a job. This recruiter were able to service the business owner.
Yeah.
And then the next month, he got 3 other positions. He came to me firsthand. Hey, do you know of anybody for this closer role, this SDR role, this closer role? So I got suddenly these 3 roles that I'm able to either jump in myself or refer more of people of the guys I know.
Yeah.
So that reputation goes around with salespeople. David referred me to this role, this recruiter, David knows a lot of salespeople, great salespeople.
Yeah. That, that's really the purpose of like my brand, necessity versus commodity. How do you make yourself a necessity versus just a commodity, right? How do you develop yourself? How do you interact with other people? How do you build value that people can't live without you one way or another, right? Because now
Yeah.
you're a necessity. And you see the difference in marketing when you're talking to watching certain things. I'm sure you click, like me, you click on a bunch of different ads, right? Especially if you're doing research on stuff. And how much stuff is just a commodity, it's just a white noise, and me in a fitness background, like as an example, would be, hey, get rid of your dad bod. Like that's not attracting anybody, right? Like that's just your general, hopefully you get someone that literally just had something in their brain that day, or a situation that came up that day where some guy and talking to a woman and she shot him down because he's fat, right? And like then sees the ad, like I need to do something immediately, but it's not a necessity. And I think it's very underlooked around in the remote aspect. And you kind of bring it up talking to some people who were in corporate forever. They had these networks of buildings, but now when you move online, you have to rebuild that. You're starting completely over. So how do you make yourself a necessity to people? Number one, it's going to be people like yourself that have monk mode. I've got a multiple skill set. It's the same way I've gotten certain positions I have. I've been a business owner, brick and mortar. I've been online high ticket 8K reverse rheumatoid arthritis offer. So I've run ads. I know marketing. I understand that. I've dabbled in copywriting. I do sales. I've helped build out businesses. So my skill set is, I built it to a necessity for a lot of people, not just a commodity. Like, hey, we all joke about the posts of, hey, we're hiring 5 to 10 setters, guaranteed $10,000 a month, blah, 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 full out knowing that if the 10 people that take that job within 60 days, all 10 of them are gone, there's a new post coming in because they just want people just cold DMing people. They don't care about you at all. And that's where the industry kind of gets a bad name. So when some of the actions you've done, have you looked at that actually as like you're making yourself a necessity? Like, people, like you said, they reach out to you now, right? They come to you. So you're a necessity in their world, one of the very first people. So besides the networking, what areas of your life also has that shown up?
I'm not entirely sure. Currently networking is the main group. I think one of the places are like fitness. If it comes to people coming to you asking you for advice, because I've in my college days, I was working out 2 days, 2 times a day, right? I was powerlifting, so I was, in the morning, I was, taking a morning run. In the evenings, it was strength, right? And I was just this hyperactive, super disciplined, like all the energy that I'm pouring into business was into fitness, right? So I became this super jacked guy, not super jacked, but like naturally thin, but with muscles to be completely humble, right? Because this is life. So, now even years later, people asking me about how to do a certain squat form, front squat, deadlift, and that's been kind of like carrying it over. People asking me for advice in fitness, even though I'm not actively as involved within the fitness community, I'm still lightly doing it.
Yeah, and I'll always be that as well. In 20 years, I mean, I still have a couple clients of people that I've been training for like 20 years. Like one of my clients was one of the very first 5 clients I ever had. And you just build that relationship. I mean, it's like family now, right? But also a lot of people know me from that. And that was one thing over the last couple of years too, kind of transitioning out of that period of my life to more a business side. it's been tough to kind of break that persona. Like I still get messages daily, like, hey, will you write me a workout program, or, put together a diet, put me together an 8-week, I need to drop 10 pounds. Hey, I need to get my crap back into gear. I need your help, which I don't mind that, but it's not the desire I want in my life to really go anymore. And if I'm working with somebody, it might take me an hour or two. Well, I could be doing something else for with that time that would excite me and benefit me in a lot of other ways. So sometimes I've got to make choices like, hey, no, I'll just go out and kind of do this. But it's one of the reasons why I love coaching too. Like that's still my main passion. I'll always have that. With you coaching people, what do you enjoy most about it? What got you into coaching? What do you enjoy about it? What's the reason that you actually do that as part of like your weekly life?
Yeah, very good question. Like one of the main reasons before I was actually like an actual coach was because, well, we've been in sales, right, and selling certain products, certain offers. Some are bad, some are good, some are disgusting, right? Like there is a scale there. So, being kind of enrolled at that certain moment, but it turns out to not be a good, fulfillment offer, right? The fulfillment side is lacking, and having sold that offer, it kind of like wears you down a little bit. Knowing that you sold something that maybe isn't the best, right? As best as it could have been. So I just realized that, oh man, I can go from 15% commission to 80% of the revenue and have control of the fulfillment side, right? I know if I'm in, fulfillment, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to just get the mission done, get the desired goal, right? And that was one of the main drivers for me to go into coaching. But now when I'm in coaching, it's like when I'm teaching the things that are so obvious to me, to someone else that's been in the game for 20 years, and they go, oh, I've never thought of this. This is makes so much sense, where I haven't just seen it. But the way that you put it makes it so visibly clear that it's something that I should be doing or need to do. And that moment of is the, oh, that's what really reminds me of, all right, so we're doing some fabulous work here. This is God's work. This is God's plan. I'm here. I'm on this road to help someone else become the better version of themselves, right? Their wins now become my wins.
It's the thing that I love the most too. It's just seeing that light bulb going off with them, right? And you see an actual change. I'll have people tell me they change all the time, and I know that they're not serious. They're just saying the words. But when you actually know that now it's a change, and I used to call it the light bulb moment. And if I go back and look at fitness example, I could be working with a client for a year. They don't lose a pound, nothing ever changes. And then we'll have one discussion and the light bulb goes off. And I just smile because I know that that was the day they made the decision to actually become better. And now they're actually taking things serious. And from that day forward is when the results massively start happening. And that's such a cool part. With myself, I mean, it's not uncommon. So being here in Minnesota, the different facilities I worked at, for how long and how many people I came in contact with. I mean, I'll run into somebody that I haven't seen in 10 years. And it's always the thank you of how much you changed my life. I've even have kids, the children of clients talk to me, oh my gosh, Scott, the moment, mom started training with you or dad started training with you, and you impacted our life as well. And that stuff is why I love doing it. And that's kind of my call to rise brand too. And it's kind of greatness, glory, and gratitude. So every day strive to be 1% better and aim for that greatness. Everything you do, give glory to God, and then every situation live in a state of gratitude. right? Because if you start doing that stuff, you elevate yourself, and that's a really big thing of where can I get 1% better?
Yeah.
How do I get 1% better? And in like all areas of my life, and the networking, when I kind of ask the question of like, have you seen that benefit in your life anywhere else? Right. And you're kind of like, hey, I'm not really sure. Networking to me, I know a lot of people have different views on it. And the network part, I never would have met you if I wasn't networking.
Yeah.
Meeting someone like yourself and meeting certain people energizes me. I love that aspect. Getting different perspectives, helping somebody out, or them helping me, randomly getting messages, hey man, I really appreciate you. These type of things that just randomly happen. That's why I love networking. It's not just the business side, but that's a byproduct of it. And so it shows up to me, in my heart as well as my mind, but how many more people I can impact as well, because like you said, connect this person with this person. They never would have connected without me. That's a huge bonus as well, type of deal. When you're going through your week, how do you set that up? Like being in monk mode, right? And you're doing multiple different things. I know you're coaching people, you've got your own business, you're doing some sales, you're networking, you're doing all these type of things. How do you keep things structured? Because, and after we talked the other week, one of the things that kind of stuck out to me, oh my gosh, I've been slacking in these couple areas, right? So you helped me, right? So scheduling can sometimes be a little bit crazy, right? Because if I put 15 minutes on the calendar of, hey, hop on social media, put a note, answer a few messages, next thing you know, you get trapped in a message or comment section, and an hour goes by when you should have been focusing on something else, right? So how do you kind of manage your days, your weeks? Do you have them planned out? Is everything structured like by the 15 minutes? How monkey are you? In your monk mode?
I don't think there's anything special about it. It's just, having the discipline. Well, maybe not discipline, but having the clarity to just go through it and just get everything done. A lot of like which you were kind of losing time on, and I'm very big on efficiency. All I'm talking about is efficiency in myself as a business, right? I like to try to get something done in less time every single time. I test myself with timer, right? Same with networking, same with for example, working out, and everything is everything with exceptions for meditation, right? I don't stress my meditations, but I plan everything out on a Sunday. I even do some operations on a Sunday to just get it out of my way. If I notice and analyze on my Sunday that it's going to be a problem, I would do some of the work on Sunday to prepare for the week. And everything is kind of like just is structured out, like color coded. I don't like to do the in between tasks, for example. Like there is some white space on my calendar, not everywhere, but if it's a task that I've set to do for 30 minutes and I complete it within 15 minutes because of the efficiency, or because I practiced this certain task where I give myself too much time, right? And I have the rest of the 15 minutes, I wouldn't go ahead with the rest of the task. I would just enjoy the 15 minutes that I have, or I wouldn't take the 15 minutes to do networking, right? Because that just clusters my mind. I have a certain room to do networking, and that's when I was gonna do networking. If I do in between tasks, it's like when networking comes there, the evenings, it's like a stone in the gut. I've already done this. I've already checked Facebook. So I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible, doing things in between tasks, because I'm stressing in my mind, right? I know every Sunday, I trust myself, I have everything listed out throughout the week. And by the end of the day, I may have 5 minutes. And if anything comes up and I need to do a certain task, I insert it for the next couple of days and I get it done. But I don't like to stress myself through task. I think my calendar organization is very similar to you, right? With color coding, certain different emails where you press on it, a bunch of stuff comes up, right? And you just activate all of them with different colors.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like to prioritize things, but also give myself time for like a breather. People think I don't breathe. People think that I'm not standing in the balcony and just enjoying the sun.
Yeah.
But I'm actually doing it, right? And it just helps with the productivity, because even though I may sound super serious, with my day being super laser focused and disciplined, I'm still giving myself room to breathe. I think that's kind of like the efficiency factor for me.
I couldn't agree more. And it's awesome kind of hearing your process there, because we are pretty close. Again, going back to like Jocko's comment about discipline equals freedom. You're disciplined to have this half-hour task I'm getting done. You get it done in 15 minutes. That's when you're enjoying some stuff. Right. And that was one thing it took me a long time to learn, actually, is to get some of that consistency, some of that structure there, because lots of times I would waste time through my day because I would be doing a task for an hour, and then at a half hour a half hour block, I had something else to do, or it could be 15 minutes or a half hour, whatever it may be. I had another task I wanted to get done, but that task was going to take me an hour. So I wouldn't even start it because I had a half hour. And then all of a sudden that task that would take an hour gets pushed out to tomorrow or a couple days later. And that's the stuff that stresses me out. So I think that's a really cool thing of what you're talking about. Hey, this is the task. And I know that you're gauging that task too, and tracking your data, going, okay, I've been setting it for 30 minutes. It's only taking me 15. So I'm going to just make that a 15-minute task mark from now on, and kind of opens that up. But I like that you're able to step away and unplug. That was something, me being a bit, when I had my brick and mortar business or running facilities and clubs and things, I was never able to step away. So the moment I woke up, I'm grinding, thinking about working until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, going to bed. I never was really able to unplug unless I completely just crashed and burned. And I had to learn to separate, this is me, this is my career or job or whatever, and separate those and learn how to intertwine them. And I think structure is really big. And you have certain people that, they have their day structured by the 15-minute. Now,
Yeah,
to me,
that's too
kind
tough.
of, that's psychotic in my mind.
That's
Now,
a real cycle sprint.
yeah, that I would not enjoy, and that would confine me, and I just, me naturally, I'd rebel against that type of structure anyway. So I've learned that about myself as well. One of the things that kind of stuck out to me was about a year ago, and it was Alex Hormozy was talking about how your schedule and how you schedule is actually going to be your downfall. And his unique position about it was, people that are so structured, everyone's talking about structures. He's like, the day that things get thrown off, your whole day is thrown off. Sometimes 2 days are thrown off because you're so used to a structure that the moment your daily morning routine isn't perfect, you didn't meditate perfectly, you didn't work out perfectly, you didn't have the perfect breakfast, you didn't have the perfect meeting, that the whole day gets thrown. And so, being like Bruce Lee, be water, my friend, right? Like, be able to be fluid through your schedule at the same time, but at the same time, maximize the time slots. And I'm way better now at, I'm unplugging at this point. This is my lifetime now.
Yeah.
Now, if I need to get something done during that time, I will do that once in a while. And that happens on a pretty weekly basis, but I'm completely fine because I'm excited by it too.
Yeah. It like creates a little bit of like excitement. Like having, I wouldn't say chaotic, but definitely not chaotic, but like having some pattern interruptions throughout like a weekly schedule. Like it just helps, man. It's just, if someone would come by and say, hey, would you like to get to a grocery store? If I'm not on calls, I would just say yes, because I know if I'm unplugging throughout the day and I feel the freedom to be able to do that,
Yep.
and just get back to it later on, it's going to help me.
Yep. And I'm a sprinter as well. I'm not a marathon guy. So it's not, I'm taking a task and I'm going to do it for the next 4 hours straight. It's not the way I operate. half hour, maybe a 2 hour block, depending on the situation. Now, I've done enough seminars where I've sat there for 8, 10 hours, so it's not like I can't do it. If I have something major that needs to be done and it's going to be 10 hours a day for the next 4 days, again, I can do that, but I operate the best when I can run really hard for an hour, switch tasks. That task run for an hour, and oftentimes that task I did before, I get better ideas of that task, if depending on what it might be, of how to improve it later that day or the next day after I've stepped away from it, rather than trying to cram everything into a time period. Do you work that way as well? I know some people are completely different, but do you kind of have an operating system that you realize you work the strongest in?
Yeah. It wasn't something that I learned over time. It was more of, hey, here's, because at my first sales gig, that was quickly noticed by the sales team leader, because we were having, sales team trainings, but I also reached out to him to have personal one-to-one meetings, right? And we did that for 9 months straight. And in one of those sessions, oh my God, it was almost 2 years ago. And I remember it's in one of those sessions, he told me never do the same task for 90 minutes straight, right? And that kind of instilled in me on even now, 2 years later, and I'm not doing anything more than 90 minutes, and then I'm switching, right? It could be recording, and then I take a break, and then I go ahead and script more videos, and I go back to recording, script more videos. So it's like sprinting a little bit, like 90 minutes. Same thing with setting calls. I would do 50 minutes straight dialing, 10 minutes in exercise and moving around, right? And I was super disciplined with me stopping at 50 minutes, because I was this 12, 14-hour guy, dialing leads. So I would get completely like exhausted by the end of the day. But implementing that was like, I'm fresh, right? I can go on for another 80 hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it's one of the things that's awesome about kind of being remote the way that we both are. We're not punching in at 9 o'clock and punching it out 5. We get to dictate stuff, and it's one thing I've always pretty much, even when I didn't work for myself or being remote, I always worked jobs where I had flexibility with what I wanted to do. I always worked with, a mom and pop type of place. Yeah, I've worked for, overseeing multiple facilities, and working for a company. The big brand was Gold's Gym, but it was privately owned by, they own several gyms. But knowing that I have flexibility to control how my schedule goes has always been a really important factor for me to be able to do some of that. Looking at your schedule and doing all the things that you're wearing a lot of different hats, doing a lot of different roles, using a lot of
Yeah.
different skills. What do you enjoy the most about that? Rather than you just like jumping on the phone at 8 a.m. and taking sales calls till 6 p.m., smiling, dialing, taking calls. What do you like about having multiple skills, multiple daily things that you do?
Yeah. I think I'm gonna connect that to something, right? Because doing the multiple things that I'm doing is partly because I'm now transitioning to a business owner, right?
Yep.
And it just comes with it. So being a business owner for me has given me a lot more control. Like, it's not rigid within like a schedule. Obviously, some coaching calls are, booked, and I'm not gonna move it because I'm committed to be there for my students, right? But overall outside, I'm able to be super flexible with it. Like, I'm able to control what it is I'm doing. Obviously, I've set some higher standards for me of what I need to commit onto each of every these tasks, but there's really no set hours. The 25 hours for my business is something that I personally have said with the calculations, but it's not something that I need to do. I can minimize that to 15 if I wanted to, but I won't. So, being able to wear so many different hats, being in control as a business owner, it's just I don't think I don't think I could pick just one. I love them all equally, but it's like talking to kids. It's like talking to kids. I love you all equally, right?
Yep, yep,
And then you maybe have one favorite, which is Sage, which is like the core, which is the eldest son, right? Which is the core of the
yep.
core of it all. But
What do
yeah,
what do you dislike some days about having to do 5 different roles, or 3 different roles, or 10 different tasks that are technically, because you're a business owner, they're all together, you
yeah,
know? And as an example, so like when I had my brick and mortar business, I had to be the janitor, right? Had to be the trainer, had to be the therapist, had to be the sales guy, had to be the marketing guy, had to be doing the paperwork. You have all these different roles. Luckily, I had a partner too, that handled a lot of the accounting and handled some of this. But some days you're going all these different things to try to make sure that the
yeah.
business is working the way it is. Now, some of that can be really exciting and some of it can be tedious work. So is there anything that you don't like shuffling through multiple things throughout each day?
Yeah, yeah. Once every week, I do my accounting and the financials side. Uh, it is tedious, but I've kind of learned to like it because it's regarding money, right? And we
Yep.
all love money, so there's I've kind of fallen in love with it. What's in the bottom, I'd say it's tech. Even though my niche is selling tech, I'm not practically good at it. Like I can get by. I mean, I'm not an my 80-year-old grandma. I can get by, but it's not something where I understand the language. I understand marketing language, the sales manager, the acquisition, but when it comes to tech and filtering in tech,
Yeah.
I'm I'm just like this question mark in my head. The Simpson monkey with snapping those two
Yep.
drums. That's
No.
my head, right?
Yep. Yeah, with tech, and it changes so fast too.
Yeah,
Right. Like, and so if you're not on the front lines of it, it's kind of like what we're seeing with AI right now. You know, you spend 6 months to learn something and realize it's obsolete. And no one's talking about it, needs it anymore. It's like, oh my gosh, why did so there's certain things when it comes down to the tech, or like one of the offers I'm working on right now. So he builds growth models for subscription-based businesses. He's actually started 7 different businesses and exited all of them. The last one he sold for like 70 million, and like Silicon Valley type growth models for businesses. Talking some of the tech stuff, you're talking over my head, right? Like it's he. If I started having a conversation with a brain surgeon right now, I would be just as confused. Or you could read me a children's book, but read it in Chinese. I'm not going to understand it, right? Like it's that type of confusion. It's like, okay, I'm not there. The good thing is you don't have to know it all.
yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. One of the biggest lessons for me going through being a business owner, I took me some time to stop being bullheaded, like I need to learn it all. Do you feel like you need to learn it all, having a business owner, having your own business and being an owner?
Unfortunately, I do. Uh, it has improved. Because I realize now with having partner and like multiple hands, right? Two
Yep.
schedules that you're able to delegate tasks. It's not something that I've done before, right? Um, so I am unfortunately one of those guys who are, just heading right into it. I don't like waiting on others. Same thing when I was an appointment setter. I would call a list, be done with that list. What can I do next? I'm not waiting for another order from the general, but I'm looking over my own shoulder. Well, where are the no shows? I'll look at the calendar. There are no shows right there. Look at the activity. No one has called. Let me call it. So that's my mindset. I don't like to wait on others. So same thing when I'm approaching tech. It's like I don't want to wait on support, right? I don't want to wait on this guy. I'm just
Yep.
gonna do it. right? I can read forms, I can do all this stuff, but I'm gonna do it. That's my mindset. It's been hurting both the, improvement of the company, the growth, but it's, also been helping. But I think it's hurting more than helping, because as we scale, I'm gonna have to move it over to someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hurting is not the best word I
Yeah.
would use, but it's preventing from certain things happening, right?
Yeah.
That's not always a bad thing either. If we took your company and what you do right now, and we wanted to make it $1 billion a year company, we could strategically, these are the 5 people we need on top. Here are the 5 departments. Here's what each department needs. Here's where, and all the staffing, and we could build out the system procedures essentially to have that become $1 billion company. Getting the automations and the correct people into that company to make it $1 billion. And again, it won't happen overnight, but we could build that out, right? And so it's not that it's hurting, but that was one thing too. One of the very first facilities I was overseeing, you have to see the, 3 different departments. It was hard for me to delegate, knowing that I had done all of those jobs. I know each one of those jobs better than each one of the employees. I can do a better job than all those employees. And then so me try to do it all rather than delegate. And I think we kind of talked about this the last time too, of if I hire you or you hire me to come into a job, if you train me how to do that job for the next week or two, just like what you would, now you can just delegate that to me. And now you're just meeting with me 10 minutes a day, whatever, but the job's gonna be done right. If there's a mistake done, you can coach me up on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so taking 40 hours a week, if I'm hired to work for you, 40 hours a week is off your plate that can be focused on that growing part, right? And so that's a big thing that I've learned. I had to learn was how to be a leader and delegate, how to trust the people that you're putting in place. The only way you can trust them is if you train them yourself. And do you trust yourself to be the leader of that person then? I know that you've got that trust, right? The other thing that I've learned too, how much stuff can you automate? Because the quicker you can automate, the faster it frees you up to do the things that bring in the money. So you'll have more to count when you're doing your accounting every single week. And that's really the part to where, you bringing on a partner, trusting people it can be hard. Do you have a hard time trusting people or not?
I don't have a hard time trusting people. I think it goes down to letting go, right? Like letting go of this specific task, like it's been a part of my schedule, and then suddenly it's not, right? It's like this empty whateverness, right? This white space, right? So I don't think there's anything with trust. Like if I were to leave my sister with some of the guys, right, I'd fully trust that she'd come, back to me with no harm, right? They would throw themselves over her, protecting her. So like that's the level of trust that I got with those within my most inner circle in this remote space. But it's like letting go, like this unattachment to the task.
That's very interesting. There are certain things, like I said, I still train some people.
Yeah.
Some of that it's afraid of letting go.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do at that time every single day? Like I never even thought about it that way, but it is hard. Change is hard, right? Developing is hard, growing is hard. Going through life, letting go, I think is one of the most important things of kind of growth as well. It's a very interesting, it's funny how much now a few different things just in the past 2 years I'm thinking about, like, oh, I haven't done that because I'm afraid of letting go of this piece. And I think some of that too could be security as well. Like, hey, I'm doing these things because I know it's generating income. If I leave it up to somebody else, that income could go away.
Yeah.
And I've actually had that problem when I had my brick and mortar business. Like if I would hire someone to take over training people, very often I would lose about 40% of my income because people would stop coming because it wasn't me. And that's sometimes a difficult thing to go, okay, well, but I'm going to be focusing on to grow the business on a different end. So I have to replace that just to get back to normal. Okay, well, I'm just going to stay here and not going to grow because that's more comfortable. So there's kind of that fine line of balancing all that out, that you're gonna have a fun time, as you start becoming a business owner. And again, you're not hurting yourself. And it's some of
Yeah.
these sins that you go through, and it's why I follow certain people because, and you and I kind of talked about the other week of if we look at someone like an Alex Hermosi you look up to, right? Technically, you're kind of in the same trajectory as he is, but you're getting a 5-year, maybe 6, maybe 7-year head start. So achieving something is really major, but we can learn from people. And I always think that's one of the best ways. If you can't automate it, delegate it, or hire it out, learn from somebody that's accomplished it, follow their footsteps, because it's going to help prevent a lot of the pitfalls we see in life and overcome them a lot quicker. But at the same time, there's nothing like personal experience and going through it yourself, right? You can read a book all you want. I mean, I'm sure you've read books on sales, right? On business, on coaching. Oh yeah, I got the general knowledge, but then you go try to apply it and you fall flat on your face. And that's where you kind of pick yourself back up and you learn from that. What are some of the biggest, give me a big lesson that you've learned in the past 6 months being a business owner?
Biggest lesson being a business owner. There's so many tiny ones. Well,
And I
no
guess
lesson is really tiny.
maybe biggest, because maybe that language is a little bit wrong. Like some big, it changed the trajectory of the world. Not that, but what's one that really stuck into your mind that was something that was impactful?
Something that's been impactful within being a business owner. I don't think that I have an answer to that.
No?
No, a lot of the impactful moments have been from starting sales. And I think being a business owner, I kind of like see it as the same thing. Like, being in business as sales, because that was one of the things that I fell flat on my first business, being a digital marketer. So now that I've upscaled my level 2 years into sales and doing my business now, is like there's just bunch of experiences to learn and still learn.
Yep.
So a lot of the impactful changes and ways have been in me being in sales. Like I've gone through so many different hurdles that now when I'm a business owner, it's something that can be expected. Because when I grew up, I've kind of learned, because I live like in a very small town, right? So when becoming a doctor, engineer, or you're out, you need to look elsewhere beyond this town in bigger, better schools. So becoming the observer in the room, as sad as that sounds, being in the back of the room or being in the corner of the room looking over everybody's shoulder, it's yeah, I mean, it's just sales. I don't think there's been any major changes within running a business than compared to sales. I mean, everything have kind of happened so far, except for maybe the delegating things. Like that's the one biggest hurdle so far, getting to the next revenue point.
Yep. And that is the biggest thing, I think, the sales piece. Being a personal trainer, starting off that way, it's crazy how many personal trainers start and just think that, oh, I got a job at a gym, I'm just gonna have all these clients. They're not told you have to brand and market yourself, and you have to sell somebody. If you can't sell somebody, you don't have a business. And so I think that, you bringing up sales, that's not a small thing. I mean, that is the biggest. And you solve that by going out, okay, I need to go get better at sales.
Yeah. The
And
next challenge will
never
come up.
stop. Yeah, and I've never stopped getting better at sales. That's something I've always continue reading, following people, hiring coaches, things, because you can always learn something from somebody and get better. And that was one of the biggest shifts for me at the very beginning too, was understanding sales was so important. Now with social media, branding and marketing, your personal brand and your personal marketing, your networking, that's a just as important in my mind. They're kind of, which came first, the chicken or the egg. You have to have kind of those both pieces. Being a sales rep too, and owning your own
Yeah.
business, right? How much have you learned being a sales rep for other businesses?
It's interesting because once you're in this observer mode,
Yep.
and being in company meetings, because when I was at schools, I got so used to observing people, like social groups, cultures, because I was never exposed to it. I mean, I live in a tiny town, right? I was never exposed to it. So everywhere that I go, I'm so used to observing other people, right? I'm not the first to get in the group and engage. I like to sit back, relax, look over everybody else, and then jump in and engage. So when we had company meetings, for example, like physical meetings, I was the observer. I was looking at CEOs. I was looking at the managers, the marketers, the investors, even within this organization that is doing 200K a month, 300K a month, and just looking at how themselves. And the biggest things that I noticed was in communication. A lot of the bigger leaders know how to communicate a vision and align all these people, right? Within this team was like tops 50 people. And somehow they got everyone aligned, right? I was like, how? Right. And that's a certain amount of leadership.
Agreed. I've learned so much from working for small business owners, because I can be in each little piece, right? It's not like you're walking into a huge skyscraper with 10,000 employees and you're a fly on the wall in the grand scheme of things. You're one nut in the machine. And I've spent a lot of money on coaches and programs, and we're talking six figures over the last 20 years, multiple six figures. A lot of them that I got into, I learned more actually from being behind the scenes. I'm naturally somebody that's very strategic. I construct and deconstruct things very fast. And I've learned more sometimes just watching how someone's operating their business, how they're fulfilling on the back end, their marketing on the front end, that I ever did from anything they were teaching in the course. And that was worth a ton of value in itself. But also being a sales rep for businesses is very, very huge too, because now you being a business owner, you're actually taking that role differently. And I think it puts you in a lot stronger position of understanding the role too, where so many sales reps, they have the 9 to 5 punch in, punch out mentality. Oh, I've got a sales call at noon. I've got nothing before that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I punch in. Oh, no show. I'm done. Now I'm pissed until my next call. Right. Or, oh, the leads all suck. Oh, this business and this offer is horrible because of blah, 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 blah. Rather than taking ownership, going, hey, that owner is doing multiple things. Right. At a certain point, you're going to scale, you're going to have sales reps. And that's one thing we kind of make a comment like, hey, that's a really bad offer. That person's giving out false numbers. Hey, come in and make 30K a month. How much did you as a business make last month? 10K. Well, how am I going to make 30K?
Yeah.
Right? So you developing a business from a sales rep background as well. That's where I'd never bring a sales rep onto any account or suggest from any account if I didn't know what that business was working to support them, number one. But also if I'm launching a business or working in a business capacity to bring somebody on, I'm never going to bring a sales rep on either if they're not going to survive, because they're a human too. And it's
Yeah.
completely unfair to kind of to burn people. And so being a sales rep, it is really interesting because you do learn a lot from observing. And I'm a big person like that too. I love social, just people watching, social interactions. I've always kind of been that way myself. And I learn a ton from watching that. Now, the leadership standpoint, I just posted about the book Force versus Power. And you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. And then that power position of, hey, there's coaches and leaders out there that people will do anything for them. Communication, sales, I think, is a big part of that. But is there anything leadership wise that you've studied or worked on yourself to become a leader like that? Obviously, it sounds like your dad was a really good influence there, but anything else when it comes down to like leadership as you start trying to grow your business, and being a sales rep, sometimes you have to be that leader for somebody on the other side of the phone too. So
Yeah.
where do you kind of develop leadership yourself personally?
Personally, I like to listen to a lot of podcasts, right? And even in sales roles, I've naturally wanted to take on more responsibility. And now in UCM, I'm discovering now people aren't doing that. But before, I was working only commissions, and I was doing that because of the joy of doing it. So same thing with transitioning from the first SDR to the first guy who went from SDR to closer. I had to train 2 new SDRs. And that wasn't something that the owner forced upon me, but it was, we got 2 new SDRs, they're going to do this. I just stepped in and I was coaching these people up on my process where they were, doing my exact volume in less time because I was doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Right. So, that just natural ability, and that might come from my childhood. I don't know. But along with this natural, leadership that I like to step into, I like to listen to a lot of podcasts with high level influential people. One of the people is Bedros Keuilian. And yeah, Keuilian. I listen to a lot of his podcast, and I see how he's talking. I see how he's, communicating. I see how he's, transparent and honest with team members, even people behind the cameras. He would, often, break the filming to just communicate with one of these people.
Yep.
For the honest truth. And I take a lot of that kind of knowledge and try to apply it into what I'm doing. One thing that I'm, very, eager to get into is have the high enough emotional intelligence where I can lead another high performer, right? And have him become a leader, and then he will lead others. So if he's a high performer and I myself, I identify him as one, right? That's good for one. And then he becomes a leader. That's, I wouldn't say mean in me, but that's a good guy. That's a good person to be underneath.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the next thing that I'm working on. And it's, a bunch of stuff that I'm getting into. I'm just I'm observing. I observe how my business partner consumes information, right? Some people will have to digest information differently than others, especially in the business realm. Some people might need, definitives, like they can't see a North Star and then imagine themselves get there, but they need, here's the steps for us to get to North Star. So all of these things comes from experiences, listening to podcasts, tactics, and I'm just getting there. I don't know it all. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do it, but I'm for sure gonna, get a far bit on the journey to getting there. Yeah.
Well, and I listen to a lot of stuff as well, and that's one of the reasons why when you and I first met, when I kind of again told you that your ceiling is up there with elite status that not many people could ever reach, and watching a lot of people, that's how I observe too. And Bedros, I started following him like 15 years ago. So he started and became well known for Fit Body Boot Camp, right? Over the
Mm.
last 2, 3 years, 4 years maybe, he's really changed that persona. I mean, he still has Fit Body Boot Camp, but it's more his persona out there and the way of acting, the way of living. And he's one of the people that I do follow and listen to. He's a really smart businessman, came from nothing to get where he is. So again, following somebody like that, you want to listen to that person. David Goggins is someone, Jocko is one, Andy Frisella is one, Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory. He's somebody I love listening to him. His podcast, he always has top level people in every single industry, right? Interviews them, they're normally an hour to 2 hours, and you can gain so much knowledge and insight there. But if you don't apply some of the stuff, it means nothing either.
Yeah.
Right. And so and I think I said that to you, but that sometimes has been my trip up and downfall. I can read something, watch something, learn something, do it. I start taking small actions, but then quickly get distracted and fall back to an old pattern rather than keep it long term and develop that. Right. And that's always on the back of my mind. And I think that's the juggle we sometimes make. We're always battling ourselves because I can get better. I can get better.
Yeah.
I can get better. And I'm not sure if you beat yourself up mentally, but when I'm trying to get better and I'm not getting better, or I'm too critical of myself, I'm not getting better fast enough. Because one of the things I really know about myself, if I have, hey, this is the overall goal that I want, and I know it's a 50-step goal. I know 20 of those steps I know how to do. The other 30 I'm gonna have to learn. So I need to start learning them. That I actually get frustrated. I just want to know it now, right? Like you just turn into a child, like give it to me now type of deal, where sometimes that process of just take the action you can today, worry about tomorrow. Do you ever have struggles like that? Looking at a business going, here's where I want it to go, and you get impatient or frustrated with yourself with not going faster?
With my business, I haven't really felt that, but I'm really on patient with, for example, like my sales process, like sales training and me picking up stuff. I'm battling with habits, but for my business, it's not really. I see it as I kind of like see it as a game, right? The business itself is called enrollment game, so every game has rules, strategies, goals, and players. So when I think about like the business steps, 50 steps, all of these 4 will matter. So
Yeah.
if I have 3 of these, what are the goals? If I got 3 of these, what are the strategies? And it's kind of like becomes this game for me of, all right, let's figure out the next 10 steps. I got to 20. Let's figure out the next maybe 2 steps, and then we climb from there. I really enjoy that side of the business because I don't know what comes next, but I'm able to create those steps,
Yeah.
right, and see if those were the the real like 5 steps that would have made it to 25 instead of 20. I made them, maybe they did 3 that are just distractions.
Yeah.
And it turns out they didn't matter, and then I find it too. So it's all a part of the game. I haven't felt impatient with that. It's more of like sales. I'm really impatient with sales.
When you're impatient with sales, what is normally
Yeah.
happening? Is it because sales is an interesting thing, right? Because
Yeah.
you can't change everything at one time, right? Which is a mistake
Yeah.
with most people. You also can't. I worked in restaurants from like 14 to like 22. So I always use the analogy of grabbing a handful of spaghetti and chuck it in the wall and see what sticks. You can't do that either, right?
Yeah.
But you need to know the process to be able to track. So when you are making changes, is it making changes? And then the other thing is you have a variable of a different person on the phone every single time. So it can get really frustrating. Like, hey, that
Yeah.
worked amazing. That person closed. You try the same thing on the next person, and it's a complete disaster, right? So what are some of the frustrating parts of doing sales that you run into?
I think it goes a lot with, if I were to talk about human bias right now, it's like if, because I've been following German Miner, name dropping him. in NAPQ. And when I followed Jeremy Miner, that was, he was the godfather. I didn't want to do anyone else. I didn't buy into NAPQ. I bought into Jeremy, right?
Yeah.
So when you buy into a person and you change your entire method to that, is like the first time I bought NAPQ, 2.0, my sales dipped, and then the next one it went back up, right? And then I went to, all right, let's up it up a bit. I got with the momentum. I was like, let's do 3.0. It dipped again, and then I had to work back up again. So with all of these human biases towards people and specific ways of doing things like frameworks and processes, I think that impacts me a lot, because if I'm seeing something, something new that I haven't been exposed to, I want to learn it. I'm observing too, so I'm seeing a lot of new strategies, and it's just impossible to learn it all within a week.
Correct.
But that's what I'm impatient about. Like, if there's a philosophy or like a snippet of, a bit of alignment where I feel that this is the way to do sales, or this is the way that I want to learn, I'm like, I want to learn it now, because if on my next sales call, if I'm, have this conflicted interest of I'm doing one thing, but I want to learn the next thing, it's like, you're becoming like uncertain within your process. So
Yeah.
that's like my biggest thing.
And being a sales rep when you're uncertain, that's a horrible spot.
That's horrible.
I can't, it's one of my most frustrating things when I don't feel confident and I'm feeling uncertain. I do not like that position at all. And I've got to force myself to get uncomfortable a lot, the phrase of get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so to change that, it helps me change in one small point. So I'm not doing that. And the first sales trainer I ever had, he would, that was when I was starting to be a personal trainer, and he was good. Right. And I learned a lot, and it got me at least into the realm. And then I started, reading other things throughout the years. When I had my brick and mortar fitness business, I was actually choosing between Gym Launch, Alex Ramosi, and then More Gym Members, which is Riley Stewart out of Australia. I ended up going with Riley Stewart and More Gym Members. And ironically, Matt Ryder was their sales coach. He was just starting Sales Sniper at that time. And so I started following him because I really liked his process, which obviously Jeremy Miner was his coach, and he was just partnering up with Jeremy Miner. So then all of a sudden, I started following Seventh Level, and both of those guys, of who they are as individuals, I hold both of them to an extremely high regard of just the men that they are. Number one, and then their process, I really agree strongly with a lot of it. It's really good as well. Talking about like Hunter and JD and UCM, those guys. Bill Walsh at the objection box. All of these people are amazing. You and I can't be any of them, and I had a coach, it was probably about 3 years ago, that he was going, hey, Scott, so if I walk on stage with Tony Robbins, and he's been on stage with Tony Robbins, actually shared the same stage, and says, if I walk on this stage with Tony Robbins and I try to be Tony Robbins, I'm going to lose every time. But if I walk on stage and be me, I'm going to blow Tony Robbins and anybody else that walks on that stage. I'm going to blow them all out of the water. Scott, if you try to be me on stage, you're going to fail. But if you walk on stage being yourself, I'm not going to be able to hold a candle to you either. And so when we look at sales, we look at the process and the options people have out there, because there's some really ridiculous salespeople out there, but there are some really good people out there. And I think we kind of just named a bunch of people right there, I think are top out there. And it is really funny how many 20 to 30-year-old kids now are out, and I say kids, no respect, I'm sorry, 20 to 30-year-old, individuals out there, males, females, all the way across the board, that they're all now trying to be like a sales trainer, and they're like quoting the same lines they're getting from Grant Cardone, Matt Ryder, Jeremy Miner, Hunter, JD. It's really funny, right? Because we've seen it. We've coached with these people. We've been through the process. We've been behind the scenes. We've been sales reps. We have our own businesses. So we see a lot of this. And it's really bad when being a copycat sometimes is the biggest form of flattery, right? Even though it's like, dude, do your own stuff. So having a structure, did you try to become Jeremy Minor? Because that's what it kind of sounded like. Because the one thing sometimes I see a lot of the people is they're just recording lines, or it's like a video, and they're trying to like embody him rather than
Yeah.
understanding the process. And I think lots of times that's where some people fail. And so when you joined and you'd see something drop, was it because you were trying to be somebody else rather than yourself, rather than implementing the system, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It was like I remember I had a call review call with my sales manager at the time, and he was like, "You sound exactly like Jeremy Minor." I was like, "Oh, that's not who I want to be," right? Maybe so that moment I was like, "Man, who am I?" Right? Like who am I? I was questioning about like myself, right? So, and at that moment, I was practically Jeremy. I was practically talking like Jeremy Minor, which didn't sound natural at all. But yeah, it was the NAPQ 3.0, and I was in the program in a couple of months forward. Then I realized that, all right, maybe I should learn the framework instead. What should I get out of each of these processes instead of just asking questions to ask questions? Yes, it worked out, right? Generic pitch will sometimes, get lucky and, you'll close a deal. But for the other percentages, something got to change, right? So yeah, I went back to practicing the framework, and that's when I've seen most of the progress, because I need a set of questions in front of me. I can just think in my head as I'm talking with someone else. Here's the process I'm gonna discover. I'm gonna find out their goals. In my head, what's the most accurate question that I can ask, or the most reasonable question to figure this out? So I'm
Yeah,
sitting here collaborating with you um, on like the goals. Do we need to set higher goals? Or are these goals something that are big enough for you to invest this amount of money, or like valued enough? So that's something that I'm still practicing. I haven't mastered it, right? Like it's something that I will never master. Like it's lifelong learning at the end of the day.
exactly. Yep.
So it's just like changing up the ways of learning things, right? The way that I learned triage calls was from a framework. I never had questions. It was, here's the stage, here's this stage, here's this stage, here's this stage. Find out about this and this and this and this. So I never really had a script like
Yep.
to begin with. But all of a sudden, when it dipped, I got a script and I was following it too rigidly. Like it was only the thing that existed.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more with that. And it's probably also why you're a good coach and a good sales individual. It's actually interesting, when I'm trying to follow, like if I'm trying to follow a script, it never works for me. It doesn't sound like me, and one of the offers I was on in the past year, it was funny, we were doing a call review of one of mine, and he goes, "Oh, dude, you just sound like Jeremy Minor there. Oh, dude, you sound like Jeremy Minor there." And I, number one, I take that as a compliment, and
Yeah.
all the utmost respect for Jeremy, because I'm listening to his stuff, so it's letting me know that I'm learning it, I'm applying it. But if my vocal change, and he talks about tonality all the time, if I'm talking like someone else and then I also become somebody else, people pick up on that too. But the time that, hey, that was a very smooth transition, that was brought out really well, that it just shows that a lot of that psychology in sales is really important, which is really kind of what they're talking. It's not about the question, what's the point of the question, right? And the framework of the question, what response you're trying to get to somebody, and get that information that you need, like you said, of, hey, if your goal is just to make an extra $1,000 a month, like our program's way wrong for you. See you later. Like you're not a fit. If you're trying to go from 5,000 up to $100,000 a month, cool. Now we're talking about that you're a fit, so you can get some of those ideas. And I always think of Tony Robbins too, of him doing the Dickinson process. Where are you now? Let's look at your past. Let's go to the future. you want to go back to the past and stay where you are? No, and so the same process you're kind of doing on a sales call to elicit that change. That's why he does the Dickinson process, because it is very powerful in change. But there are times when I hop on a sales call where if you're following a script, you're trying to be too much like a salesperson, like you kind of go into that salesperson mode sometimes. I do worse that way. I can sell one of my clients on anything when I'm just being me. When I'm coaching somebody, you're essentially a salesperson to them. You're
Yeah.
selling them on the idea of change, right? And so having both of those skill sets, where for so long I was developing that, working with clients, helping them to change and to see change, that directly reflects with sales as well. And it's helped me out tremendously there. Now, do you see things flip-flopping back and forth between a sales call and a coaching call, the same type of, I guess, frameworks that you use?
As I'd say the minority of the times it is. The other times it's really as like a coaching call. It's, answering questions, looking at the process, looking at the results, provide the next step for the transformation, or just challenging certain beliefs. There are certain coaching calls where you need to kind of like re-enroll into the vision, like something have been lacking, or you have been, just dragging by, just getting by, right? And it's all that matters, but that's not really the goal, right?
Yep.
So reigniting that, well, that's not really a place where we want to be, so we shouldn't settle. So that's kind of like a little bit of the sales parts of it, which, and I heard from another gentleman who's running sales agencies, and he's been in sales for 2 decades now, and he was like, sales people will make really good client success people because they understand the part of the communication with people and re-enrolling,
Correct.
being able to challenge beliefs.
Yeah. And I think it's a huge part of it. And I think that's where some sales individuals struggle so much. They're just reading off a script and not understanding the real aspect of the conversation. One of the, to really care about that person. I've had some coaches say, get in your heart, get in your, like, I don't, and I don't exactly see it that way as much as I think about, do I care enough about the person across from me that I want what's best for them? Right? I want what's best for you, David. 100% I do. Right? Every single sales call that of people that I talk to, I 100% want the best for them. Sometimes that's not them buying.
Yeah.
Majority of the time it is. But the analogy that I love and that I've heard, if you drink a bottle of tequila in the next hour in front of me, I'm not going to let you go hop in a car and drive away and die. Some of the people you're on a phone call with, you have to look at it that way. Dude, I care too much about you to let you go do something stupid. So how do we help them realize they're about ready to go do something stupid? They need to stay here and take action to go the right path. And that's a tremendous thing that over the years with coaching people, to be able to connect and have that type of rapport with people really fast has served me very, very well as well. To develop. And I think sometimes when you get stuck in a script, you can't build that as effectively and as strong. So making sure that you do have a process of, okay, if we're spending the next 2 minutes here to connect on a personal level before I take the next step and to take you into the next piece of the process, I need to know what that next process is, so I don't get off that we're just hanging out and having friends and then, okay, well, I got to go. Okay, see you later, type of deal, and be careful with that. So, what do you need from me right now, David?
What I need from you.
Is there anything? Actually, I'm gonna hit stop record.
Yeah.